Hey, fight fans, welcome back to Carlo Prusa MMA. Today, I am with UFC fighter. He is Mr. Kurt Holobaugh, getting ready, making that return to the UFC octagon, taking on Alexander Hernandez March 15th. Kurt, what's up, man?
Not much, man. Just finished up a good training session. Like to wind down after my training sessions with a little sauna work, man. Just cool down and yeah, and chat with you.
Awesome, brother. So, I mean, you've been at this for a very, very long time, fought on promotions all across the country. And, I think a lot of people in this day and age, they watch mixed martial arts. It's so culturally accepted now. But, when you think back at it, 15, 20 years ago, people calling this human cockfighting. It wasn't legal in every single state. During the early days, the first few fights, whether it be early pro, early AMI, do you have any crazy fighting stories of maybe fighting in bars, barns, outside, mystery opponents? Do you have anything nuts?
Yeah, man. Coming up, I was fighting 17 years ago. I made my debut fighting in 2008. And I've kind of fought a little bit everywhere. I had my amateur debut. There was actually a really big show. They did a big show out here in Louisiana in Baton Rouge at the Raising Cane's River Center, which is a big, nice arena. And then, I go from making my amateur debut in MMA fighting on that card. So I'm like, yeah, I made it. It's big time, And I turn right back around. My coach gets me a fight up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and it's in a rodeo arena. So we're like in dirt. I'm like, well, the last one was pretty cool, but this one's kind of like in dirt, And then that same night, I actually they did a same day weigh in and fight. So you weigh in that morning, you fight that night, and I was actually fighting at 170 pounds at this time. My opponent never showed up to the weigh-ins or anything, and I actually was like a half a pound over. And their team was like, "Yeah, man, look, he'll be here in a little bit, but yeah, go ahead and cut that half a pound." So I threw a sauna suit on and go jogging around the parking lot, and I finally hit 171. My guy never shows up to weigh in. I don't see my guy until his music hits and he walks out. And I'm like, did this dude even weigh in? Because he looks like he's 185 pounds right now.
You've been doing it for such a long time. At that time, 2008, UFC was starting to catch some traction, but, UFC MMA in general was not what it is today. Did you ever envision this to become what it is right now?
Probably not, man. I think 2005 they launched the very first episode of The Ultimate Fighter, and I was already a really big fan of UFC, and I remember watching that whole season. Because it's before that season, it was kind of hard to find the fights. I think maybe Buffalo Wild Wings just started playing the pay-per-views and stuff like that. Other than that, I remember I had to watch clips of some of the shows on the best damn sports show period on like ESPN and stuff. But other than that, I don't know. But you see, like now, it's done become, I mean, mainstream, global. It's done grew up to be something bigger than I think anybody ever thought it could be.
You're from that Louisiana area. Obviously, a lot of big fighting in that area. Then you have Mississippi, Alabama, the areas beside it. Obviously, the D'Iberville boys in Mississippi did some really big things. What is it about that area and fighting?
I don't know, man. I think it's just the way everybody's kind of raised down here, and there's so many guys that's been able to come out and out of like the South, and I'm not even gonna say just Louisiana, but like you said, Mississippi, and even some of Texas, Alabama, man. There's so many names that's made it big in the UFC or has done big things, But I think it's just a little bit of how we're brought up down here.
You made your UFC debut originally 2013. You found a huge card, John Jones, Chael Sonnen. Do you remember where you were when you got the phone call that you were going to be signed and fighting in the UFC?
Yeah. So actually, the way that all that happened is I stepped up. I want to say January of 2013, and I fought Pat Healy for Strikeforce, and Pat Healy was the number one contender at the time, supposed to fight Gilbert Melendez for the Strikeforce lightweight title, and Gilbert Melendez got hurt and pulled out of the fight, but went on to the UFC. The straight up challenge, I think it was could have been Anthony Pettis for the UFC title. So I stepped in and fought Pat Healy. Well, I actually signed a UFC contract whenever I fought Pat Healy. So I kind of knew that I would be going to the UFC right after that because, that was the final Strikeforce. They wasn't going to do any more shows. And even Sean Shelby came to the back after that and said, how would you like to come fight in the UFC? And I'm like, hell yeah, man, like let's do it. So I remember I was at my house and I got the call from my manager at the time, and he said, "Hey, bud, I got here's your opponent. They got you booked for April. Um, this is the card." So I'm like, "Well, man, I'm in the UFC now. You know, I made it." So it was very cool, man. And it was, but like really, like I was saying before, like being from Louisiana, man, like of course they had so many guys that kind of paved the way and went on to the UFC and do big things. But I don't know if I ever really thought that I would have made it to the UFC, because I don't know if that was really my goal in mind when I started fighting MMA. I was just doing it because I was a fan of the sport. I loved to fight, and I thought it was fun. Next thing you know, I'm freaking fighting in the UFC.
Obviously mixed martial arts has changed. UFC has changed in ways. When you look at the UFC now from when it was maybe in 2010, 2011, 2012, a lot more shows now, making it a lot easier for those regional guys to make a breakthrough in the UFC. The roster is so much bigger. We're seeing shows almost every single weekend now. Back then, if you were a big fight fan, you knew everyone on the roster. Now, you may not know everybody on the roster. Not saying they're not great talent, but, do you feel like the mystique is different maybe now in the UFC than it was 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, it could be, and it's just probably because they have so many shows. But then again, it's crazy how the UFC has so many shows, but they sell out almost every single gate they do. You know what I'm saying? So even the fight nights and the smaller pay-per-views they do, they still sell a big gate. So it's crazy that you can keep fans that entertained, even with, like you were saying. I mean, there's probably a lot of people that don't know me, even though I've been around for so long, you know. But there's a lot of guys in the UFC that a lot of people probably don't know, and then they get these shots, and then maybe have an amazing fight, and that's why the guys are going out there. They want to get on that radar. They want everybody to know them. I want everybody to know me, and there's only one way to do that, and that's by keep on winning. You got to keep winning and move up those rankings, man.
You had a total of 3 different stints in the UFC. Second one starting off by the Dana White Contender Series on one of the first seasons of that. What was that experience like?
It was fun, it was fun, and the thing about it is, I done kind of been around the world a little bit. I went and I did some fights in Russia. I signed with other organizations, and I still kind of had a good platform being on like the UFC Fight Pass platform, and fighting tough guys outside the UFC. I really think prepared me for that Contender Series. And when I showed up to fight on the Contender Series, it felt like the UFC fight. It felt like these big fights, and I've been traveling and fighting for like the last, since I got released from the UFC the first time. Like I did 2 local fights at home, and then the rest I'm on the road, in all different states, getting that travel experience, and it all kind of feels the same. And then showing up to Vegas a month prior to the Contender Series, doing all of our photo shoots and our interviews. I already felt like I was back in the UFC, and in my mind, I was like, it wasn't a doubt in my mind that I wasn't going back to UFC after that fight. And I did what I did in that fight, won by knockout, got the contract, and started my second UFC run.
To be a mixed martial artist, it's really a journey. One of my good buddies, Alex Nicholson, and I, we always talk about the fight game has so many ups and downs. Obviously for you, UFC, battling it out on the regional scene, having to go fight in other countries. So many people watch it, but very few people realize what being a professional fighter is. I think they look at the big names, the McGregors, the Adesanyas, and they're like, this is the best life ever. Little do they know, man, it's a very difficult life. Obviously, when you're fighting on the regional scene, a lot of times you're losing money. Guys have 9-to-5 jobs. They have kids. They have the wife. Most people have to pay to train. They have to wake up early, stay up late. Deal killers want it just as bad as them, just to chase the dream. You've been chasing this dream for a very, very long time. What's made you stick with it every single day?
Man, I don't think I can live life without it, and that's what I try to preach to some of my young guys, because I mean, I'm blessed enough to have my own gyms to where, I get to come and I get to train every day. And not only did I get to do that, it's kind of like my job. And not that I'm forced to do it, but, it's not like, if, okay, well, I don't feel like training tonight, I stay home. No, because it's my job to get up and go to the gym because I have to run these classes, so I get to teach, I get to train every single night. And I don't think that I can have a life without that. And I think for me, that's what's kept me in such great shape and kept me fighting through all these years, is that I'm always ready to fight. I might get a little heavy at times, but I never stop training. You know, I might eat bad, I might drink some beer, whatever it might be, but I'm still in the gym every day, training, teaching. I got my own fighters that I'm coaching and bringing up. I got some pros and amateurs and stuff like that. And and I try to tell them, how I made it to the UFC and how I've done all the things and accomplished everything I've accomplished. Because there's a lot of guys that, man, I came up with that had great talent that, for whatever reason, life took them another way and they was never able to achieve their dream of being in the UFC and stuff like that. So I try to tell them, man, it's like, you got to just stay. If that's what you want, that's what you want to do, you got to stay with it. Don't take a long breaks, man. Like, don't pick and choose your fights. Somebody calls and offer you a fight, take the fight, move up, keep building your record up.
It's funny you bring that up. In this day and age of mixed martial arts, you really see the business side of it. And you're starting to see that from prospects, even on the regional scene. You're starting to see very padded records. You're starting to see maybe even some promotions that have their guys, they're going to kind of protect them. What do you think of the way this is going?
I mean, I think that's just the way it is. You're always going to have that. And sometimes it sucks. There's times where, I might have a fighter that might have a bad run, lose 2 or 3 in a row. And then we're like, man, I know he's tough, but he might not need to fight a killer right now. He needs to fight somebody just a little bit less, a little bit lower. And, you know, to get back on a win streak. I never ask for what we would, I guess, call a bum. I never ask for a bum for my guys. I'm like, look, give him a good match, a fair match. I'm not trying to make him fight the next guy they're trying to bring to the UFC right now. Give him a fair match.
How much gratitude do you get in being able to share your craft with guys, who want to go to the UFC and do this for a living as well?
I think a lot, man. I think I got so many guys that look up to me. I got my kids' classes that I'm a role model for. All these kids are watching me on TV and do the things that I do and watch me on the Ultimate Fighter show. And I think a lot of kids and a lot of my students really look up to me and I feel like I'm showing them that things are possible. I was a small town kid, man. I never came from anything, and, look at me. I'm freaking in the UFC on like my 5th freaking contract.
Who are some of the pros that you have right now in the regional scene that we should expect to make some noise for future years to come?
Well, I got a guy right now named Gage Gill. He just fought. His last fight was at the Unified up in Canada. He's 6-1 now, but he fought their top 6-0 guy, and the winner was supposed to go to like the UFC or the Contender Series. He wound up dropping that, man, but he's super good. He's a guy that's up and coming. I got another guy that's kind of back and forth, man, but he's a good pro fighter. He just needs to get his head into it. Carlton Terrence, and then I got a couple other guys coming up under them that are amateur that I think can really push it and make a run.
Obviously, if I'm talking with you, we got to talk about the Ultimate Fighter. You got to be on an awesome season. Team McGregor, Team Chandler, really cool dynamic. They had some like prospects, if you will, and then they had a bunch of former UFC guys on there. Jason Knight, Brad Katona, yourself. It was absolutely loaded. How did that whole thing come about?
Yeah, but like you said, man, the UFC, I guess they wanted to load it down. And they wanted to do this little theme to where they was going to have ex-UFC guys that are no longer in the UFC. Maybe had a bad run, and then they had the up-and-comer guys that are trying to make it to the UFC that's never fought in the UFC. And I think I just fit the criteria, My manager, the Sucker Punch Entertainment, hit me up, and he said, hey, man, I just sent you a application for the Ultimate Fighter. And the first thing I thought was, I don't want to do that shit. Like, man, I'm too old to go do the Ultimate Fighter. I got a family at home, man. I got gyms, and I start thinking, and then, my family, my teammate, my friends, they're like, my kids, they're like, wait, you're not gonna go? I'm like, I don't know. Like, should I? They're like, absolutely. Like, why not? I'm like, well, you know what? It would be cool to say that I've done Contender Series, I've done the Ultimate Fighter, I've been in the UFC. So I'm like, screw it, man. Let's just see where it goes. And yeah, they select me to be on the show. I was a guy that was in the UFC, and not only that I was in the UFC, I had a tough road. I feel like they either they had that much confidence in me, or they were just throwing me to some of the wolves. and sometimes that happens. But, I fought a tough roster when I was in there, and things didn't go my way. So I decided to take the shot at the Ultimate Fighter, and, I wound up winning. So here we are again.
I really think that really showed a lot about mixed martial arts was that season. When you look at guys who maybe not have as much experience, and then a whole team of guys who had the UFC experience. Obviously, only Rico DeShulo was the only one to be able to win from Team McGregor. Going into it, did you have a feeling that you guys would do well based off the whole experience factor?
I did because I carry everything. Like every time I go to fight, I love to feel like, man, I got the experience. I've been here before. There's nothing different. I've experienced everything. You know what I'm saying? I've lost every way possible. Like what else can happen? I've been at the highest. I've been at the low. And I really carry that in with me in fights. So I really felt that we was going to do very well. Once I seen the team that we had, I seen the coaches we had. Nothing against those other guys. I'm friends with every one of them. We still a lot of still keep in touch. But I just felt like that the experienced guys that we had was going to play a factor against the inexperienced, and as you see, it did.
So, of all the fights in that season, the one that I got the most excited for, without a doubt, was your fight against Jason Knight. I mean, honestly, if anyone watches both of you guys fight, it's must see TV. So, Jason told me in the past, is it true that you two had a gentleman's agreement before your contest?
It was. It was. So, as you said, man, but the cool thing about that, and if you watch the episode, after the quarterfinals is the semifinals, but there's no matches made for the semifinals yet, right? There was everything was pre-matched. So the quarterfinals, we did the picks and the coaches did the rankings. I got matched up with Lee, I won. He got matched up with Landon, he won. So then it left four of us in the semifinals, but we didn't know who was going to fight yet. We thought it was still going to go, number one fight four, number two fight three, but no. Dana brings us into the office and he says, who's your easiest path to victory and who do you want to fight and why? And I'm like, well, there's no easy path to victory here. All these guys are great. But let me tell you what, why don't you do me versus Jason, Mississippi versus Louisiana? This is a fight that was supposed to happen back in 2012. Never happened. We were the two best coming up, on our regional circuit down south. Let us do it here. Why not here? Why not now? And he said, all right. Next thing you know, the next day we go into the house and it's posted. So we're like, all right, let's go out and let's try to do a fucking Stephen Bonner, Forrest Griffin type fight. No takedowns. Like, let's just stand and brawl. And I'm like, deal. Let's do it. So, and as you see, we did.
Jason Knight, a guy recently tied it up. I think yourself, I think those are type of fighters that you don't really see too much anymore. That's a different breed, man. Those guys, you guys got the dog in you, man. And I think it's kind of lacking this day and age. Do you agree?
Yeah, a lot of guys, and it's very important to go out and get your win. Let's start there. The win is the most important thing first and foremost. Everybody needs to get the win, no matter how you get it. And if you can take a guy down and lay on him and don't take no damage for 3 rounds and get the win, good for you, man. I'm happy for you. But for me, sometimes it's just so hard for me to sit back and be patient. But I'm learning to. I'm learning to sit back and be patient. Not that my fights are not going to be exciting. Not that I'm not going to go forward and try to knock this guy out. But I got to have an ounce of patience, because these guys are going to want to wrestle, which I feel like I've done kind of touched up on my wrestling too. I feel like I got some underrated wrestling, and my jujitsu I feel like gets better every day. I feel like I can submit anybody that I fight. I've submitted quite a few good black belts in my career. So, but yeah, man, guys like me, guys like Jason, we just like to go out there and just fight. But that's the part that we like to do that's fun for us.
Following the tapings, following you guys leaving the house, you got a fight on the O'Malley Sterling card. You fought Austin Halbert in the finals. Got your hand raised and won the season of the Ultimate Fighter. You've been doing it for such a long time. All the sacrifices, all the birthdays missed, all the time away from the family. Was that really a time where you got to reflect and be like, yeah, all these sacrifices were worth it?
It was, man, because it sucks to say, but that was my first legit UFC win. So I've been after that for, a long time. And I've gotten close, man. I've had some fights with like Ione Barcelos to where I probably should have won that fight. My debut against Steven Siler, just rookie mistakes, but I should have won that fight. And then I fought Shane Burgos and I dropped him. I probably should have won that fight. But it sucks. But like I said, I finally got it done. And at my later years, I think my experience really plays a factor. Me fighting all around the world for a long time really plays a factor. And like I said, here we are now, man. I'm winning fights in the UFC years later. And, I couldn't be more happy.
No, you're really looking at right now this current stage of your career. I mean, this looks like the best Kurt Holobaugh we've ever seen. What changed? Was it a mentality thing? Did the goal change? Did anything change for you?
Probably a lot of the mentality, man, because it's like, like I said before, what's the worst that can happen? I've already lost. I've already been at the bottom. Like, there's nothing else that can happen to me that hasn't already happened. So now it's just like, and even I've been back in the UFC. I lost a fight, but I'm like, I don't care. I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna answer that phone call on the next one. I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna try to win, and that's what I did. I feel like I'm sitting in a good position right now. Um, I feel like the UFC is happy with what I'm doing, and I want to keep doing that. I want to keep making the UFC happy. I want to keep, pleasing my fans and my family and my friends and everybody that enjoy watching me. Um, so yeah, I just think that, it was a long time coming, and I've always had the skill. I've always had the talent. Now I'm a lot smarter and experienced, and that plays a big factor.
So many people watch this in this day and age, and now you have what's called the casual fan. These are the people that are usually drunk. You see them at B-dubs, cheap seats of the fights, that twist them in the what, stop crotch sniffing, all this crazy stuff that these people are saying.
Yep.
What's your take on these people?
Man, look, without them, we wouldn't probably be where we are at our, with the fans that we have. We got to have guys like that. You always got to have haters. The world don't go around if everybody loves you. So you're always going to have guys that love you. You're always going to have guys that hate you. You're always going to have guys that might say you suck because they're sitting on their couch and they've never gotten to a gym in their life. But whatever. Those are the guys that keep buying the pay-per-views and keep making the wheels turn on the bus for the UFC.
All right, let's get into the fight. You're taking on Alex Hernandez, guy. Been doing it for a very long time. He's fought some very high-level components. This one get you excited?
Man, I feel like, whenever I stop and I start thinking, man, who's the UFC going to put me up against? And me thinking that, I don't want these newer guys coming to the UFC. I don't want to be that guy that welcomes all the new guys. I want some of these guys. I want that Jim Miller. I want the freaking Tony Ferguson. I want Joe Lozon. I want all these guys that have been there. And then here we go. Now I got one of those guys. I feel like Alex Hernandez is one of those guys that I've wanted to match up and fight. And I've been watching Alex for a long time. I know who Alex is. I think he's a complete dog. And I think it's going to be a badass fight. I really do. I think it's going to be a fun fight. We'll have to see what happens. But I'm happy with it, and it's one of these fights that I feel like, okay, I beat Alex Hernandez, I can move up in the rankings, yeah, it's gonna be a fun fight, and I can't wait.
Stylistically, how do you like this one?
I think it's very good stylistically, and here's the fun thing about this, man. We got so much MMA math going on here. We both fought so many mutual opponents. He just fought Austin Hubbard last in that fight, and that was a very good fight, very close fight. Some can say probably they thought Austin Hubbard won. Some can probably say they thought Alex Hernandez won, but that's a good fight, and I feel like he fights a lot like Austin. So I don't feel like this was a style that I've never fought before. I think he might hit a little bit harder, might be a little bit faster, but hey, man, I'm good with it. Like I'm here to fight. I don't care. The UFC when my manager called and said, "Hey, Sean said he got this for you." I didn't think twice. I'm like, fuck yeah, man, give me that fight. Like, I'll take it.
You feel some momentum going in this one coming off of a win?
Always, man. And it kind of sucks that one was a little ways away, man. I'm always feeling like I'm my best whenever I'm, every 2 or 3 months, every 4 months getting on a roll with fights. But it is what it is, man. I'm gonna be happy. I'm gonna be in shape. Like I said, I never stop training. Every day I'm in the gym training. So I'll be in shape 100%. It's going to be a fun fight. I'm looking forward to it. It's definitely one of these fights that can steal the show, especially on an Apex card. So as you just seen some of the fights that we just had this past weekend, man, that's the kind of fight that I see this turn it into. So I'm excited about it. I hope Alex is excited about it too, man. Like I don't feel like I'm a nobody. I feel like I've been around for a long time, man. I'm an Ultimate Fighter winner. How many guys can say they won the Ultimate Fighter? There's only been 31 seasons. So yeah, man, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited about it.
I think there's some love and hate with the whole Apex situation. Some guys like it, some guys don't. But I think when you look at it, when you look at fighting on an Apex card as opposed to one of the big pay-per-views or one of the big fight nights in arena, I think your odds of winning a fight of the night bonus increase a little bit. It doesn't really matter where you are on the card. Do you think the same?
I definitely think that, man. And it kind of sucks 'cause I feel like my last couple fights, other than Trey Ogden, I kind of got stiffed on the 50,000 bonus. I feel like with my submission over Austin, if that would have been in the Apex, I feel like that was easy performance. But no, Sean O'Malley got to go out there and knock out Aljo and steal that from me. And then the last fight that I had with Krzyzewski, I thought everybody walked in and was like, yeah, that's fight of the night, man. Congratulations, congratulations. I'm like, thank you, thank you. I'm getting the fight of the night. They don't give fight of the night. They give 4 performance bonuses. So I'm like, come on, man. What's brother got to do around here to get 50 G's? So I'm going to go for that whenever I fight Alex, man. I think he's the perfect opponent to get a bonus. So hopefully we make that happen.
Do you enjoy the dynamic of fighting in the Apex?
In a way, I kind of do, and one of the main reasons is now we get family tickets, so I can have my whole family sit in front row. There's not many times that I'm going to have my family be able to sit in front row and on a big card. Yeah, they can go, but they're going to be high in the stands. I can't hear them. In the Apex, man, if you watch the last fight, I think he annoyed a lot of people, but my 4-year-old was screaming his lungs out, telling me double leg, telling me spin kicks, all kind of crap. So I look forward to hearing that again.
How
I
cool is
hope
that?
I hope Alex does too, because he better get ready. My boy is going to be coaching me.
How cool is this to be able to share this with your son as well as your family?
Man, I couldn't ask for anything else, to be honest with you. I feel like I've done all I needed to do. My dreams are accomplished, and no matter what happens from here on out, I'm happy. I feel like I've done my family proud. I've done my kids proud, and my kids are coming up, man. My kids are some savages. They will be, if that's what they want to do, they're going to have options. I think they'll be able to play, college football, college baseball, basketball. They're all around athletes. They play almost every sport, but they fight. My 14-year-old already has like 9 cage fights, boxing, MMA, kickboxing. He's constantly in a cage, and so is my 5-year-old now. He's been in a cage multiple times in grappling matches. He every day he says, "Dad, I want to fight in a cage. I want to do MMA." And I'm like, "Slow down, son. We gotta." It's hard to match a 5-year-old for an MMA fight, but let me see what I can do. But no, those kids are gonna follow my footsteps and be and hold my name proud.
Do you feel you get a little more nervous when you're watching your boys compete than when you're actually out there fighting?
Oh man, like it doesn't even compare, which is so weird. You would think that you would be so nervous. You're about to step up and fight this guy that's going to try to kill you, but you're more nervous when your son's fighting a 5-year-old or a 14-year-old. I get way more nervous when my wife or my kids fight. I would much rather have me out there so I don't have to be as nervous.
It's really amazing when you look at the crop of talent in this day and age in mixed martial arts. I mean, it's so amazing. These kids are coming in there 24, 25 years old, so high level. I asked Jorge Masvidal once, what is the reason for this? He told me it's so culturally accepted now. Families are talking about this at the dinner table. Kids are doing jiu-jitsu at 6, 7 years old. By the time they're 19, 20, they have like 4 or 5 amateur fights under their belt, 23, 24, maybe 8 or 9 pro fights. Is this the reason we're seeing this?
Absolutely. My youngest, he's 5 years old now, but we signed him up and he was doing jiu-jitsu competitions at 3 years old. And I say a fresh 3-year-old. And he did so well. My wife made a TikTok and his TikTok went viral. He's got almost 30,000 followers on TikTok. So yeah, man, and he's a freaking savage. You can go look his TikTok. And the cool thing about my youngest son is his name. We had to name him. We knew he was going to be badass. We knew him coming up under me and his older brothers. He was going to be badass. So we named him Raiden off of Mortal Kombat, and then Thor for the God of Thunder. So he's Raiden Thor, the Thornado. So, and he lives up to the name, man. He's a freaking character. If anybody goes and looks at his dang TikTok, is gonna see, oh yeah, this kid's crazy, man. This kid, he's gonna probably follow his dad, as well as my 14-year-old. He's got already in Louisiana, you can fight youth MMA. You just can't punch to the head, but it's a regular fight. You can kick to the body, you can knee to the body, you can submission, all submissions. And he's got 9 of those fights already. He's only 14. And he does USA boxing.
When you look at Louisiana, you see obviously some great guys in the UFC come from that state. Obviously yourself, Dustin Poirier. You have now Brendan Allen doing big things. How awesome is it able to, fight along those side of guys who are able to put Louisiana on the map?
Yeah, and the thing about Brendan's one of those kids, man. Brendan was whooping my ass at 13 years old. He was in the gym training. He started with me in the gym I was in. I remember he was 12, 13 years old in the adult class, and he would put it on my ass at times, Now he's a lot bigger, a lot stronger, so he doesn't let me forget when he comes to trains. But yeah, but that's one of the reasons I think, like, you see his success in the UFC, but he's got a lot of experience, man. He's been doing this since he was a kid, fighting adults in the gym.
You mentioned a little earlier with a win, you want to just keep climbing the rankings. At this point in the career, what's the goal for you?
Man, I think the goal for me is to get a number by my name. I want to see a number by my name before I have to hang it up, or before the UFC don't want me no more, whatever that may be. But I feel like a number by my name really solidifies everything. Everybody's gonna be you.
All right, Kurt, last question for you, my friend. In the perfect world, what is the outcome when you take on Alexander Hernandez March 15th?
A finish, man, whether it's knockout, submission. I believe I can get the job done anywhere. If I got to gut it out for 3 rounds, I will, which I'm always prepared to do. But yeah, man, I think just a good finish, man, a good finish and a good performance, and to get my hand raised in front of my friends, in front of my family, and to come back home with a victory.
Absolutely, Kurt. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for talking to me again, man. I can't wait for the fight, and I wish you nothing but the best, my friend.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. That's it for us tonight. I'm Carl Prusa. It's Mr. Kurt Holobaugh. Take it easy, fight fans.